We've reached the point in Chicago Bears training camp where important players keep leaving practice with injuries. But the good news is that the only severe injury we've seen so far is from safety Kobe Bryant.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. And on the show today, we're going to break down all of the different injuries the Bears are dealing with right now with key players at a number of important positions on both sides of the ball. We'll hear from Braxton Jones about how much better he feels now than he did last year prior to just now leaving training camp practice with an injury that sounds like it's not too severe, but it's an important opportunity for the other guys in the left tackle competition to try and climb back into this thing. Montez also leaving practice with an injury that appears to be minor, but we'll hear from Dayo Odeyingbo about his long road to recovery, and we can also check in on Austin Booker's progress so far. And one guy not dealing with injuries anymore, Jaylon Johnson at cornerback, detailed some of his recovery process and just how much better he is feeling right now. So we will touch base with one of the few uninjured players that we're really glad to not see dealing with injuries anymore. Today's episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Health has been the biggest factor for Braxton Jones's career at left tackle for the Chicago Bears. It was the biggest reason why he struggled last season and was benched. It was obviously what ended his season the year before, and he had never really fully recovered from that injury when then getting into a training camp battle last year and winning before eventually being benched and getting back on injured reserve last year. Now he feels so much better, or was feeling so much better as training camp got rolling through the first week of training camp. Like now he left training camp practice with the trainers and is dealing with an injury. We don't know the exact extent, but the early reporting on that has been, hey, nothing too severe. You know, he was frustrated by it, certainly, because anytime you're missing practice, and certainly he's missed a ton over the time, you get frustrated, but it doesn't sound like the kind of thing that's going to extend the way that Kobe Bryant's more severe injury is hampering the defense, over at that position group in the secondary. But I thought Braxton Jones did a really good job just communicating how poorly he felt last year, how he was never really healthy, and how much better he feels now, the kind of progress he made in his injury recovery. He said all this before suffering the injury at practice just this week, but given how minor it is, I think we can trust that, hey, Braxton Jones will be back to the way he's about to talk now in terms of how he's feeling and practicing, and it's why he's so far running away with the left tackle battle.
What do you think you can do now, health-wise, that maybe you couldn't do as well last year?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I just wasn't getting much power out of my left leg, and now it's rolling, and so that's really just about everything. I feel like a tick of everything's just gotten better each and every week, each and every month for myself. So just being able to move more consistently, day in and day out, being able to come back and, still have that level of movement than I did the last day. Before, I would do 2 days and couldn't do the third, you know what I mean? And it just didn't look very good, couldn't move as well. Now I'm consistently still feeling the same day in and day out, and my ankle's responding, knees responding.
You almost were trying to play last year on one leg. Is that?
I mean, I was playing on 2 legs. It's real hard. I mean, if you've really dealt with one of these injuries, it's really significant like this. It's really a mental thing. And it's like, yes, my leg wasn't strong enough, but the mental part of it was worse than anything. And it's just something I had to go through. And I'm blessed now to see it from, pretty much outside looking in on what my timing was through God's timing, and trying not to understand it myself in that moment. But it's all right. I mean, you could say that, but I think I still was playing on 2 legs. I just, didn't have the muscle to mind connection yet.
So there's like multiple layers to this, right? On the one hand, he didn't have any power in that left leg, and you could see that on tape in the first 4 weeks of the season last year before he got benched, to where, he can, when he's getting out of his stance, right, and he's kick sliding to the left, he can like catch himself with the left leg, right? He's pushing with the right leg and catching with the left leg as he's moving backwards. But you saw him get beat inside a lot because that's where you would need to then like plant that left leg and then get power off of that left leg to keep people from crossing your face and going inside of you. Whereas like he can ride them to the outside because he can keep pushing off of that right leg just fine. But anytime you need to push off that left leg, well, he couldn't get the power, and that was a real problem he was dealing with. And then even as you're rehabbing that, like building back that confidence in your leg that like, hey, there's still muscle there, right? And you have to like learn to trust it, that when you do go to push, it's not going to hurt and it's not going to tear and it's not going to cause any more problems. That once you've properly recovered it, then like regaining not just the strength, but like the like he talked about, like the mind to muscle connection there of like how to generate the strength and trust that it's going to be there and have both legs operating the way that they're supposed to, just mentally knowing what it felt like for so long recovering from the previous injury to now getting back to being, the best version of Braxton Jones prior to whatever new injury he's dealing with. He walked off the practice with the help, with trainers. So it wasn't like he was, carted off or couldn't put weight on or anything. Like, seems to be something that's not aggressively severe there. We'll see if we get more of a concrete update at some point on what that might look like. But in the meantime, it creates just a little bit more opportunity for the rest of this left tackle battle, because up until this Braxton Jones injury, he was starting to run away with it. Early on in camp, they would kind of split left tackle reps fairly evenly, where the first day Braxton Jones gets to be with the first team, the second day Jedrick Wills got to be with the first team, the third day Karan Amagashi got to be with the first team, and then kind of continue that three-man cycle rotation. Theo Benedict was getting some first team snaps here and there, I believe, but I think most of his time has been spent at right tackle in training camp so far. But over more recently, like the last 3 or 4 practices, Braxton Jones has been getting the majority of the left tackle snaps, and it's been harder for Jedrick Wills and Karan Amagashi to get those first team opportunities. And we've been saying on this podcast for weeks now that like Braxton Jones is the front runner, and really the only way he loses that left tackle battle is if he gets hurt. And all of a sudden, he leaves practice with an injury, even just a minor injury. But that means that every practice Braxton Jones sits out is fresh first team opportunities for Jedrick Wills to show the coaching staff that he can get back to the starting caliber offensive tackle play he was earlier in his career with the Cleveland Browns prior to him dealing with a bunch of injuries. It's first team reps for Karan Amagashi to reward their faith and development that they've been putting into him since he was a 3rd round pick 3 years ago that hasn't quite panned out yet. But every time he gets those opportunities, it's another chance to say, see how much better I'm getting. Keep giving me these opportunities, and I'm going to continue to keep getting that much better. And so I think the impact on this left tackle battle will be solely based on how long Braxton Jones actually does miss with the minor injury that he's dealing with. If it's 2 days of practice or whatever, I think Jones will slot right in and be just fine. But if it's, say, 2 weeks of practice, like all of a sudden you're getting to the first preseason game a week from Saturday, and if he's not able to go for that, so then Wills or Amagashi is starting, and then the other guy's taking all the second team reps, like all of a sudden when Braxton Jones comes back, maybe it's 50-50 between him and whoever else is right there with him in the competition, right? Like it just kind of depends on what the timeline looks like here. And I think for him, that's why he expressed a lot of frustration on the field after suffering the injury, because it feels like, man, this is the only thing standing in his way, and now it's standing in his way again. So we'll keep very close tabs on when Braxton Jones gets back out there, and any kind of injury update we get for him is going to be a critical part of that left tackle battle. But he's not the only important Chicago Bears player that has been leaving practice with injuries over the last few days. Montez Sweat also departs at the most critical position on the team, the biggest weakness on the roster that they're trying to develop and grow quickly at training camp along the defensive line. So we'll check in on where things stand with him, as well as the return of Dayo Odeyingbo and the progress of young Austin Booker next on Locked On Bears. This episode is brought to you by Home Chef. Life gets busy, and figuring out what's for dinner every single night can quickly become another thing on your to-do list. Well, Home Chef takes the stress out of mealtime by delivering fresh ingredients and easy-to-follow recipes right to your door. Whether you're looking to eat healthier, save money on takeout, or simply spend less time grocery shopping and meal planning, Home Chef makes cooking at home simple, convenient, and enjoyable. And people really love it. Home Chef is rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off and free shipping on your first box, plus free dessert for life. Go to homechef.com/lockedonnfl. That's homechef.com/lockedonnfl for 50% off your first box and free dessert for life. Homechef.com/lockedonnfl. You must remain an active subscriber to keep receiving the free dessert. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by Gametime. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now, but the hard part isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees that pop up at the last minute, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. But that's why I love using Gametime, the app built to make buying tickets simple, with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help you get to the events you want without the usual hassle. I'm using it to go to a baseball game this weekend. I've been going to concerts with Gametime, been to Bears games with Gametime. It's always a seamless experience. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Montez Sweat is not only the most important player on the Chicago Bears defensive line, but his impact makes him one of the most important players on the Bears defense. Notably, like the highest rated Bears defensive player in the NFL top 100 list, for example, and someone who is supposed to be the cornerstone of that defensive line. So when he exits practice with an injury, it raises a lot of eyebrows right away. Like Braxton Jones, the early indications are this does not look to be a serious long-term injury. We don't know the full extent of what it involves, but not necessarily something that's going to jeopardize, say, his regular season is what it sounds like here. And then I guess the good thing is, like, Montez Sweat is somebody on the roster who probably needs training camp practices the least, just in terms of his development and growth as a player, right? Like he could sit out training camp in theory and still be pretty good to go for week 1. And you wouldn't be worried about, is he developing enough? Like, is he getting enough reps? Like, he'll be fine, when the real game starts. Doesn't necessarily need to be out there, but you do want to make sure he's okay and that he's going to be good for that regular season. And so I'd absolutely be as cautious as possible with him, just because you don't have much else on the defensive line that has been proven trustworthy, reliable on the Chicago Bears. But they're putting a lot of their hope in Dayo Odeyingbo, coming off of an Achilles injury, taking a step forward and being the $20 million salary defensive end that they signed in free agency last year. Like, he's making $20 million this year. He's one of the 5 or 6 highest paid players on the Chicago Bears roster this year, and they need him to play like one of the 5 or 6 best players on the Bears roster. That is asking a lot given what we've seen so far, but he made a miraculous quick recovery from the torn Achilles injury he suffered late October last year. Like, late October puts it like 9 months ago, he tore his Achilles, and he wasn't even on the physically unable to perform list to start training camp. He is just good to go. And as it turns out, this was not Dayo Odeyingbo's first Achilles recovery. I don't know the full extent of what his previous Achilles injury was, but he had recovered from an Achilles injury on the other foot prior to his NFL career. So it turns out he knew a little bit of what he was going through or what was in front of him, what he had to do to get back. And I wonder how much that actually kind of helped his recovery this time, because he knew exactly what to expect, what worked well the first time, maybe what didn't work well the first time, and how to maximize that recovery. So here's Odeyingbo talking about coming back from the Achilles, and then I spliced it to go right into an answer of him about how he and the rest of the defensive line are trying to be more attacking this year with some different coaching directions from Dennis Allen's staff.
How'd you go about getting yourself back as quickly as you have?
Just staying locked in, just attacking the rehab every day, just taking it one day at a time. So,
have you surprised yourself with how quickly you've been able to progress?
No, I mean, I've dealt with an Achilles before, so I kind of knew how the rehab went, and this was a little bit easier process than the first time. So, wasn't too much of a surprise. Just sticking to the process.
Was it the same Achilles that you had the last time?
No, it was my other one.
Is that strange to be doing it on both sides, or is there anything different from the two rehabs?
I don't think it's that uncommon. Like, I know a couple other people in the league that have done both of them. I think it's better than doing the same one twice. So it's kind of, once you're repaired, you're in a good place.
What do you think is the key to improving this pass rush? I'm sure you've heard a lot of the chatter about not bringing in a new body.
I think it's just committing to more of an attack style of play, which is what we've been practicing. That's what we've been working on this year versus last year. Stop, kind of reacting to what the offense is doing, playing more on the offensive and attacking more as a defense.
So Dayo Odeyingbo had torn his other Achilles tendon in the lead up to the NFL draft in 2021. And I think it's part of why he ended up going, 54th overall to the Colts that year, coming out of Vanderbilt there. So I think it's certainly concerning that he now has two torn and repaired Achilles tendons, that you do sort of wonder if the repaired version is as strong as the previous version of those Achilles tendons. But on the other hand, tearing his Achilles tendon, then the other Achilles tendon, didn't necessarily ruin his career, right? Or make him some worse player. Like, one of the concerns when somebody tears their Achilles is, like, are they going to lose explosiveness, right? Like, are you going to be able to generate as much force and power out of that torn Achilles? But like Odeyingbo did that coming into the NFL, still had an 8-sack season a couple of years ago in Indianapolis. Like, was still able to flash everything we've seen as far as flashes from him in the NFL after that Achilles injury and recovery. So in theory, it does alleviate some concern about, well, will he be the same guy after this Achilles injury? Like, if it was the same Achilles twice, we would have some real concerns. But the fact that he did it before and got back to 100% and is now doing it again, the other one, tells me that he can get back to 100% and be whatever the best version of Dayo Odeyingbo is going to be that the Chicago Bears have this season. And I've seen a lot of people debating, whether Austin Booker is going to take over as the starting defensive end and kind of surpass Dayo Odeyingbo on the defensive line depth chart, if you will. And I'm not sure it's going to be so black and white in terms of, like, well, one is clearly the starter and the other is clearly the backup. Because a big thing they wanted to do last year with Odeyingbo that they didn't have a lot of opportunity to do, and that they are now doing with him at training camp, is rotating him inside to defensive tackle in pass rushing situations. And so when you move Dayo Odeyingbo into defensive tackle in pass rushing situations, you can then take Austin Booker and put him at defensive end and have Sweat at defensive end and Odeyingbo at defensive tackle and have three defensive ends on the field, just one of them at defensive tackle, to keep the tackles fresher and to get more of your edge rushers on the field together. And so in that way, there's going to be an opportunity for Austin Booker to be one of your primary pass rushing edge rushers there, kind of like a starter, if you will. But I suspect that Dayo Odeyingbo may play more total snaps and still be the true starter there. I mean, they are paying him $20 million a year, and he's healthy. So I don't think they're going to just stick him on the bench and only rotate him in sometimes and see in key play situations. Like, I would imagine when the Bears are in their base defense with 3 linebackers and 4 defensive linemen, Odeyingbo will be the starting edge rusher there. But then when they go to nickel and bring in a slot cornerback, that maybe you see more Booker in those situations, and you see Odeyingbo sometimes get some rest on the sideline, sometimes kick it in defensive tackle. Sometimes they'll give Sweat some rest on the sideline and have Odeyingbo and Booker out there. Like, I just think you'll see that be more of a rotation. And it reminds me a little bit of like the debate at wide receiver, right? Is Rome Odunze or Luther Burden going to be the number one wide receiver? Well, how do you define number one wide receiver? They're both going to play really big, important roles, and it'll be kind of a blurry line between who's number one and number two. And I think that'll be a similar situation for Booker and Dayo Odeyingbo this season, so long as Booker kind of picks up where he left off last season. And by all accounts, he's added some explosiveness. He's improved his stance, added some muscle as well. And as Odeyingbo was telling us, like, they're all being more attacking as defensive linemen instead of reacting. And I think that should be really effective for Austin Booker, who looked at his best last season when he was in a 2-point stance and was just firing off the ball, as opposed to like when he was in his 3-point stance, he was doing more of like a standing up and reacting as opposed to just shooting off the line of scrimmage and getting upfield. So I think there's a lot of potential for Booker to not only pick up what he was doing last year, but even be even a little bit better in some of those pass rushing situations. And obviously run defense is going to be a really key factor there that Odeyingbo definitely has more of an edge in, and I think is going to be why over the course of the season he plays more snaps, because he'll be in on running plays a little bit more than Austin Booker, even if Booker maybe has more sacks and more edge rushing, pass rushing snaps. But overall, I think Odeyingbo might still be on the field more, so long as they're both healthy. Obviously, any kind of injury changes that back and forth. But it's like good to see whatever the best version of a motivated Dayo Odeyingbo is coming back off of the torn Achilles. Similar story for Jaylon Johnson, who dealt with a bunch of injuries last season, but is feeling so much better. A lot of parallels in the way that he talks about his injury recovery to like Braxton Jones, and just feeling like night and day different from where he was last year. So we'll check in on how Jaylon Johnson is feeling primed to get back to his Pro Bowl caliber play, coming off of just a tough injury season last year. Next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you know who's hitting a home run today, then FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. You just make your free pick on who you think is hitting a homer in their game, and if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the Major League Baseball season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games. Whether you're following your favorite team or just keeping an eye on matchups across the league, every game has multiple players capable of going deep. And now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. So while there's been plenty of concerning injury news in the Chicago Bears secondary, it has completely avoided Jaylon Johnson so far through a training camp. And that is not only just great news for Jaylon Johnson and for us to get to see him come back, but also for this Bears secondary that desperately needs him to be back and healthy, because it feels like a lot of players around him are dropping like flies. Obviously, we saw Kobe Bryant suffer the knee hyperextension, bone bruise, and I forgot what the third thing was, like light fracture or something that is going to keep him out 8 to 10 weeks from when he suffered the injury, missed the first month or month and a half of the regular season potentially there. But then we've seen Elijah Hicks started training camp on the physically unable to perform list. So you're down 2 safeties. I believe one of the other backup safeties, I think Javarius Owens, left practice with a severe looking injury or some kind of injury this week. So you're down maybe 3 safeties there. And then at cornerback, Kyler Gordon Ben Johnson has no update on Kyler Gordon's recovery, just still working, hasn't really been out there like with trainers doing too much, like still recovering there. And Terrell Smith got dinged up at practice as well. So we've seen like 2 or 3 cornerbacks all dinged up. And it feels eerily similar to some of what we saw last year, where it was all concentrated at some of those same positions. But the big difference so far is that Jaylon Johnson is not one of them. Jaylon Johnson is feeling so much better than where he was last year. And, we knew that last year, right before training camp, right, he tweaked some sort of groin issue that was on the non-football injury list for a while, and then was kind of on and off the injury report all season. And then, late in the year, he kind of strung together some health and started to look a little bit like Jaylon Johnson, but it was just kind of this in and out of the lineup. And even when he was out there, just didn't look like the same guy. Turns out he was in a lot of pain, like all season, and doing whatever he could to try and get out the field, but certainly wasn't 100% himself, and really just needed like this 6 or 7 months of the offseason to like fully heal up and regain that speed and mobility he needs to be a shutdown number one cornerback. Here's how he described what he was dealing with and why this recovery process has been so important for him.
Physically, the difference for you today versus 7 or 8 months ago, how do you describe kind of where you're at?
Night and day. Like I said, I needed a full off season to get my legs back under me, to get some scar tissue and things like that out, really just work and push my body. So I feel really good. I feel good with my speed. I feel good with where I'm at, laterally, change of direction, and all of that. So I just got to keep stacking days, just working on my technique and getting consistent and getting back to just being dominant.
You said it's been you're talking 60%, 70%. Is there a way to kind of like get across it exactly how healthy you felt?
I mean, put it like this, the only time I wasn't in pain playing was probably the Rams, maybe the first Packer, or the playoff game. Other than that, I was taking pain medicine, getting numbing shots, trying to do whatever I can, getting extra work outside of the facility. So, I was doing everything I can. At the end of the day, I was only 2-3 months out of growing core surgery for a corner. That's a tough position to be in.
What did your off-season look like as far as training? Like, how different was it rehabbing the injury versus like a normal off-season for you?
I wouldn't even say it was too different. I think really just working on the mechanics of running again. Again, with core and growing, the knee drive, the knee lift is something that I had to get back. In the beginning, doing a lot of speed work, I can definitely tell that's where I was really weak at. So just really hitting that, trying to get the speed, the lift, and I would say just hip flexors, growing. All of that's kind of connected. So just attacking that early. And then really just getting back to myself. Training, lifting, running, sprinting, just the usual stuff. But I would say there was definitely some areas where I felt weak at, and got into Pilates too. So Pilates is one of the things that I'm gonna continue to do. I'm gonna get some at the house so I can continue to get my core, get my growing and things like that strong and lubricant for this year.
So that's a lot that he was dealing with, right? Like pain pills and shots just to try and play on Sundays. And when we saw him out there for some of those games, just not looking 100% himself, when you're trying to play through that pain, and it's it's in your groin, right? I don't think I have to describe like the discomfort that's there, right? Like when you're trying to run and turn and generate power and speed, and just, oh man, that just sounds miserable. And to go like all the way until the playoffs before you really weren't in too much pain. And I thought he did start to play a little better in those playoff games. Like, man, that's tough. And it makes sense when you think about the groin and core surgery he had. Like, it was a very quick, dare I say, rushed recovery from that, because he wanted to be back out there helping his team and, trying to be the best version of himself. But it definitely hurt. And it sounds like it will hurt both literally and figuratively, his ability to play at a high level. But now the Bears are even more desperate for him to stay healthy right now, because it's him and Tyreek Stevenson and the rookie Malik Muhammad. I think Jaylon Jones got dinged up a little bit too. And then, Thieneman and Cam Lewis. It's like you're kind of scratching at your bare minimum 5 guys who you don't hate playing in the secondary right now. But like, you can't afford to lose any more safeties, and you can't really afford to lose any more corners. If Terrell Smith is back soon and Jaylon Jones is back soon, then okay, you've got some guys there. But right now it feels like you got 5 guys you'd be comfortable starting at those 5 secondary spots, and you can't take any more of them missing any kind of significant time here. Plus, a lot of those guys you want out there developing and getting those reps in. Like, Jaylon's a guy that doesn't even necessarily need to be out there pushing it, because he knows how to play defense at a high level when he's actually healthy and not dealing with a bunch of pain, just to be able to play on Sundays there. So I think we can confidently feel like full speed ahead to the best version of Jaylon Johnson coming back this season. And that's going to help the Bears defense cover receivers better, make the quarterback hold on to the ball slightly longer, give the pass rush slightly more time to get home. And then, 8 to 10 weeks from now, when Kobe Bryant is back out there, if Kyler Gordon can at some point get back out there in recovery from this soft tissue injury, like, you can start to piece together a Bears secondary that looks pretty good. But it is not the case right now in early August at training camp. I think the one thing I want to make sure we remember is that this happens every year at training camp, and every team goes through this where, pads have been on for a week or so now, and people have been hitting and getting back to it, and people get banged up at training camp. The Bears are not nearly as banged up as, say, the San Francisco 49ers right now, for comparison. And the most important thing is that only one of these has been severe to a important key player. I think a couple backups have had some severe injuries here and there. They released one of their fourth string defensive ends with an injury designation, right? Like, they've had a couple of less important players have severe injuries, but like, you're not seeing key guys go out for long periods of time outside of Kobe Bryant. I'll take one I can live with up to the stage, and then other guys having stuff in and out. That's kind of normal training camp nicks and bruises. Like, I don't know this for sure, but I would speculate and say that some of the guys who they've taken out of training camp practice with injury would be playing if there was a game on Sunday, right? They wouldn't be 100%, but could play if there's a game on Sunday. And there's no reason to rush them back to practice when it's a month before, more than a month before the regular season starts. But I think it's those kind of injuries where it's like they're hurt, but they could play if they need to, but there's not a rush to get them back. So they're going to take their time with them. Like, that feels like more like what the Bears are dealing with right now. And we can manage that. We can live with that. We can survive with that. Certainly, as players get healthier, or heaven forbid anything gets worse, we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. Coming back on Monday as we'll break down all the training camp storylines from over the weekend, and we'll always make sure to give you another opportunity to bear down.